You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Dr. Skutnik, we are testing some new tech after Jacob, as you guys don't know, you can't see Jacob off film or off camera, but periodically I'll glance over and he'll have taken his hand and run it through his hair and be taking these huge breaths as if like the whole fucking matrix is about to break or crash. And as he was doing it yesterday, I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, dude, this Zoom thing. He's like, I just can't deal with it anymore. This thing having all these issues. He's like, I can hack it, this. And I'm like, is there something better? And so we have quit Zoom and we've moved over to Riverside, which I think will be a much better experience for not only me, because then I won't have to watch Jacob have a panic attack mid fucking podcast. But all this aside, Dr. Skutnik, we are going to talk some nutrition today. More importantly, some Power Athlete Radio focused nutrition on one of our favorite initiatives we've done over the years, Hammer 90.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So with a deep dive nutrition, I put together a few questions I want to ask you, and really what they are is their pain points and things that we've come across, not only being a teaching professor, but having a nutrition kind of business on the side where you work with athletes and people and everyday people and helping them along. I feel like day one, everybody's excited, but as they get into the rigmarole and get into just the process of what it takes to dial in their nutrition, hopefully cut some body weight, put on some muscle, and potentially recomp, I feel that there are pain points. So just wanted to get into them. So everything else good with you? Fight any wars on social media and the internet today?
Not today, but it's early. Things are good. I am hanging up the distance running shoes for a while. I ran my race last weekend, and now just back in the gym. So when I was running, I was doing 2 times a week, doing grindstones mandatories, but now doing 5-6 days a week. Dude, I am sore. I'm my hamstrings, my hips are very sore. But yeah, otherwise nothing new. The university semester is wrapping up. Graduation is this weekend. So summer is upon us.
Yeah, we've been smashing a new program, which we were doing the everyday kind of full body, version of grindstone. We went back to like a 2-on, 1-off, 4-day week grinder. And yesterday I hit it pretty hard. And then this morning I had to go up there and finish out the rest of it on the Friday with the guys. And I have this chest pump where I'm like, oh my God, my chest is so pumped because we haven't really been doing, anything outside of 4s. So I was keeping a lot of 4 to 5, maybe 6 reps at most. And now we're at 8s, 10s, and 12s. And it's definitely an interesting stimulus. When you've been hitting a lot of heavy 4s, then you go back to a more of a moderate rate, 8 to 10. There's a lot of blood flow. There's a lot of pump. I was like, ooh, my chest is so pumped.
Yeah. I mean, because you programmed in those leg press because you have the leg press up there. So I subbed in, I did wide stance box squats for those, and all those sets of 10, man, my glutes, my hamstrings, it was walking around yesterday afterwards was a little rough.
Yeah. Well, we failed the margins of our experience, and I have some fun equipment in my home gym, my building. So I tend to kind of program that stuff specifically for me and the crew. And when other people are following it remotely, I'm like, let me see how they adapt this one a little bit.
Yeah.
I
think the box squats did it right. Hit the intended stimulus. And it was kind of fun. I haven't box squatted. I know I was telling Jacob before we hopped on, I was just listening to your podcast with Jen, and you guys were talking about box squats in there. I haven't box squatted in probably 10 years. So it's just kind of something fun to mix it up, try something new. But they were potent for sure.
Kate started doing it with her clients. And I think it was so that they could hit depth better. And then when I was watching them one time, they were kind of just plopping on the box. So I bought this kind of foam blue pad thing. You've seen it from Dave Tate at Elite FTS. for them to sit back on, because I wanted them to like hit that and kind of like control the descent and then come back up. So I was like, well, just because the thought of somebody sitting back in a box and just like crashing on the box, like that position in terms of like cervical loading and just like a bar in the back, it's a bad position. And so we added that, and I think Jen asked the question, like, why do we do it? I'm like, just because I got tired of watching the ladies plop. But then we started using it as like this a way to kind of like control the descent, pause, and then come back up. And it's kind of interesting to take the stretch shortening cycle out of the squat. It makes it, at least for me, dramatically harder. I didn't realize how much like speed and kind of tension and force that I drive out of that stretch shortening cycle to help me on the concentric. When I take it out, it's like. But then when we went out to Westside, those guys were box squatting the fucking world, which makes me realize that it's probably a skill that I need to develop a little bit.
Oh yeah, because I went to probably 2015. Shane Sweat put on a conjugate seminar that I swung through, and we were talking about the box squat, and yeah, he was like, everybody messes it up because they like roll out of it and roll back into it, and the whole idea is to kind of have that static point where you transition quickly. You don't want to sit and completely unload and then have to load back up. And so when done right, they're really, it was fun. It wasn't fun doing, what did we end up doing, 60 reps yesterday? That wasn't necessarily fun, but when it started, it was good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it was 5 sets of 10. Okay, obviously, 150 pyramiding up. But the interesting part is I've been following your Build the Base program. So I've been throwing in a little bit of extra stuff, and I found that if I, like, for some reason, and I know this is shitty, I need like kind of an extended warm up. So I'll kind of ride for like anywhere from like 10 to 15, maybe even up to 20 minutes, and just kind of like somewhere try to get my heart rate up to like 125 and just like get like a good like kind of warm, and then I go in and jump in on it. And if I do that, I can peg my heart rate a lot faster. When I come and do it cold, I feel like by the time I'm finishing, I'm kind of warmed up. So I've just been doing these extended warm ups, so it's been keeping me anywhere from like, I don't know, like 35, like 20. I think the shortest one I've done thus far is like 28 minutes, but like the longest one was like 46, 47. And I can definitely feel that extra work in my legs when I'm doing stuff. Like today we were, hitting the upper body, but I was like, dude, like we were doing some trap bar, and the bar was moving way too slow off the floor for what the weight was. I like went and checked it a few times. I'm like, fuck, this should be way heavier to be moving that slow. So it's kind of interesting. But then once you kind of get into it, you get into shape. And I think that piece ends up becoming like very important, actually a good driver. I just didn't realize that I had kind of like let myself slip out of shape because I was kind of keeping everything in that 15 to 20 minute window, of the aerobic stuff. But now I realized like based upon just doing your stuff, that's like a warm up now. Like, like that can't be the workout. We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Power Athlete delivers battle-tested performance programming for every kind of athlete. So do you want to go from average Joe to MVP? Then dominate with Field Strong. Get stacked and jacked with Jack Street. Hustle in life and still build muscle with Grindstone. Fear no opponent with Dragon Slayer. Be harder than coffin nails with Hammer. Max out minimal equipment with Lean Enable. Or unlock those newbie gains with Bedrock. Get over to powerathletehq.com/training and choose your 7-day free trial right here, right now. Get lifting, get training, get in shape, all while listening to the rest of this show.
That's the thing. MCK and I were talking about conditioning a while ago, and like that's kind of the double-edged sword of it. You get in shape, and you're like, man, I feel great. But then you realize, to continue to really get in shape, I need to push it longer or whatever to where I'm not feeling like you always have to push that edge, right? Because like the strength training is just put more weight on the bar, but the sets and reps look the same. Yeah. But with conditioning, it's usually the time factor that needs to be stretched. So
you commented, I got my wife an Oura ring for Mother's Day, and I ended up getting one for myself just because she's like, we should get it, and one we can track each other. I'm like, okay, that's great. And like, she'll keep me accountable because my wife's obviously insane. She might be like the most hardworking person I've ever met, to the point where I'm like, damn. So I've been Like this tracks heart rate at sleep, and so does my 8 sleep bed, which I actually love. And the interesting thing is I can kind of track a little bit of like how good a shape I am by how low my heart rate gets when I sleep. And I've been pretty consistent at like 42. So much so
Nice.
that the Aura Ring actually dinged me as being red for being too low, because Kate was like a 51 when she sleeps, and hers was green, but mine was red at 42. So like the fact that like my heart rate's consistently getting down to 42 when I sleep just means that my conditioning is getting pretty good. Like I think my daily,
Yeah, for sure.
my average over the course of the day is like 60, and I'm pretty consistent at like 51 if I'm like sitting still. So
Yeah, so I've just a watch. I don't have the ring, but that's what I like to do. Just kind of spot check throughout the day. Just like peek down, like, oh, where am I at right now? Because yeah, sleep is one thing. To have a low resting heart rate there is good, but throughout the day, it's like I look at that as like, am I holding on to stress right now, or am I pretty relaxed?
Holding on to stress, which for your job, and I'm sure anybody that's a parent, father, mother, anybody that's in that care business, stress is an interesting stimulus. And like over the course of the day, obviously I take my kids to school, and like they start coming home right around like 4:00, and then all of a sudden like that's when the stress level goes up. And it's mainly because like my daughter plays basketball, like my other daughter had a soccer game. Killy actually scored a goal yesterday, which was pretty good. And then Kashi, they lost in the first round of playoffs on Saturday, but his all-star stuff I think starts on Sunday. So, and then now he's going to be in the all-star, so that'll be nice and stressful for us. So, because he's one of I think he might be the youngest kid on the all-star team. All the kids, he just turned 9. All the other kids were like 10, so they're like a year older than him. So he plays in that 10U. Nice. All right, dude, let's dive right in.
Cool.
Question number 1, why do people fail when it comes to nutrition? Even if their training's on point, like what is that like major pain point where, if you think about like there's a few things that humans do just instinctually, right? We defecate, like we got to be able to relieve ourselves. We eat and we sleep. Like those are like the 3 autonomic, or I mean, they're not autonomic. I mean, we have to do them. It's not like breathing and heart rate, but like you think about every human every day has to sleep, hopefully, right? They're going to have to expel themselves unless they're on some 40-day fast, and then you end up just consuming yourself. And for the most part, you have to eat something, or unless you're really, really heavy and you decide to fast again. But for most people that are listening to this, they're probably eating something every day, they're using the restroom, and they're sleeping. So like those 3 are kind of non-negotiables. So why is it that they tend to fail at the nutrition? Is it emotion? Is it psychology? Is it just access? Is it lack of preparation? Like what's the pain point that you encounter? This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I think it could all be umbrellaed as, well, two categories: environmental and behavioral issues. And so like the environmental stuff, I'll use myself as an example. We cannot have granola or trail mix in the house because like I have no control over that. Like if I start eating, it could be like I'm just going to have, a little handful of granola. Turns in I'll eat the whole bag, right? So environmentally, we've changed the environment, or I've changed the environment to where we just remove that. There is no granola, there is no trail mix. And I think that's one issue that people face is, they got to wherever they are, maybe they're carrying around 20 extra pounds or whatever in the environment that they live in. And so if they want to change themselves, they need to change their environment. And so just kind of cleaning up those, whatever you want to call them, trigger foods or whatever that you just don't have control over. That's one way to kind of change things environmentally. And then the other way, I think people are ill-equipped in terms of environment is they don't necessarily have the tools to really implement a good or a healthy kind of cooking and food preparation plan, right? So you can have the best laid intentions, you can have your macros all set out and stuff like that, and you can go to the store and you can buy all the great food. But if you don't have like a good cast iron skillet, a good set of knives, like, you need a certain amount of tools to prepare that food to make it, palatable and delicious and something that you want to eat. So I think those are kind of two of the environmental things that I see pretty often. People set themselves up to fail by still buying foods or being around foods that aren't going to help them succeed, or they have all the foods that they need, but they don't have the tools. And I'll put the skills in there as well. A lot of people, to a surprising degree, I guess, a lot of people just don't know how to cook beyond real basic stuff. They know how to preheat the oven and throw something in there. But in terms of actually cooking, meaning like crafting a meal, seasonings, pairing foods, things like that, and it doesn't have to be super complicated or super complex, but I think people just don't know. I mean, you and I both know how many times do people like, oh, I'm going to get my nutrition straight. And then it's just like baked chicken and white rice forever. And it's like, that's disgusting. It's so easy to level that up just by, you and I both big fans of Casey and Tacticalories, but like leveling yourself up by just grabbing some seasoning and making things taste good. Losing weight sucks, but it doesn't have to be worse than it is. You can make it taste good. You can make it delicious still. But people don't know that. People don't have those skills on how to do that. So environmentally, those are like the two. And then behaviorally, like they aren't prepared. They have the best intentions usually, but they aren't prepared to really work at it. And what I mean by that is all the time what we see, diet starts Monday. Boom, Monday hits, great. Tuesday, awesome.
National get ready day is Monday. That's why I don't like starting anything on a Monday.
Yeah, but then when the going gets tough, like it's gonna get tough, and behaviorally they are not there to where they can talk themselves out of it. People want to say like willpower and things like that, but the reality is, there's a lot of baked in issues with the food system to where your brain gets rewired to want certain flavors and certain degrees of flavors and stuff like that. So kind of on a subconscious behavioral level, you don't have control over it. And so this is where usually when I'm talking to people about nutrition, it's like, this is why you need a coach, is because you're going to fail. It just happens, right? But having an external kind of accountability there for when you're behaviorally, we'll say, compromised, right? You either like, hey, I'm going to go to my buddy's birthday. We're going to cook out. Like, I'm going to panic there. What do I do? Right. Having a coach helps with that. At home, I'm super stressed out, had a long night of, or I worked 24s or whatever. What do I do there? Again, that's where the coach comes in for the accountability. So the behavioral side is, it's emotionally driven. People tend to find themselves eating with their emotions when they're stressed, when they're upset, or things like that, which is great. I mean, that like the reality is we are built around a society that celebrates with food, everything, right? Birthday parties, promotions, but
Christmas. Think about Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. I mean, St. Patrick's Day. I mean, every holiday in this country has a specific food attached to it. You watch NFL Sunday, it's wings and beer, or barbecue cookout. I mean, it's the emotion tied to food, and it's done by the food companies. I mean, it's
for sure.
It's not by like accident. I mean, it's, you think about like the diamond industry, 2 months salary and everything from the De Beers people. All of that was put into play so that they could convince you that, that you have, if you get engaged, you have to give a diamond as like a symbol of this thing. That wasn't a real thing. And they've done a great job in terms of layering this in. And we have such an emotional connection to food that somehow when, you're ostracized or you're not, I guess taking place or like taking part in like what everybody else is doing, there's this feeling of like, how come you're not eating? What are you doing? And then people start like bombarding you. What do you think you're going to get in shape? And there's like almost like a crab bucket mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. And like with the food side, wings are really funny to me. I love wings. I'll smash,
who doesn't like
wings?
Who doesn't like wings?
But the funny thing is, for the longest time, they were just the scraps, right? Like they were getting tossed away. And then somebody was like, hey, wait a second, like, let's try and spin this into a food. So yeah, the food system is set up to make us eat. And yeah, when you go, I mean, all the time, if we go somewhere, family thing or whatever, it's not necessarily like in a degrading way, but they notice that my wife and I eat a certain way, and it kind of makes things a little awkward. So yeah, you want to avoid that because you're at some celebration. You don't want to be the weird one or make people feel weird. So I can understand that. But again, this is where the coach comes in, is like you can navigate that in a certain way. You know, when we go to holidays, I still fill my plate up, but the strategy in which I eat is different than maybe others, just so I can make sure I can get my nutrients and stuff like that in a certain way. But then also, when we talk about environmental and behavioral, the reality is too, and this is something that people have a hard time coming to terms with, if you're really looking to make change, right? Especially if you're looking to make like drastic change. If you have, 40 pounds, 50 pounds that you need to lose, there's a very real reality that there might be people in your life that you have to cut out for a bit too. Because again, we are social beings. We are the product of our whatever inner circle or whatever. And people, and maybe this is just me, maybe I'm kind of an asshole for this, but like, if people are going to enable you to do things that you don't want to do, that are pushing you away from the version of health that you want to be in, those people probably aren't going to be the ones that you want to be hanging around while you're trying to make this big change. And so sometimes you can just have a conversation with them and say, hey, like, I'm trying to do this thing. We'd really like your support, whatever. But if they're not going to support you, then they're probably not worth having in your circle, at least for now, while you're making this change, because it's hard. It's hard enough as it is. And so any other barriers or blockades along the way, if you can cut them out, that just makes the path a little bit clearer.
What if that is your significant other? I am blessed with a wife who is very, very focused on health and wellness and fitness and being in shape. And she always jokes that the reason she's in such good shape is that her husband owns a fitness company. And if she's not in good shape, it's going to look bad. And I'm like, Kate, like I appreciate that this is like your elevator pitch for the reason, but no, it's a little bit out of vanity. I mean, she likes how it looks. I mean, she likes the performance aspect of it. It's something that she gathers a lot of like self-esteem with. But like, I can imagine having or being married to somebody who's not in that mindset. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, I want to go here. And like, super hyper palatable foods. And you're trying to like navigate this thing. And I always say that if you can meal prep and like make your own food and weigh and measure and do everything at home, if you can eat 90% of your meals at home, you're pretty close. Like you'll have like a much better chance when all of a sudden you have to go out and start eating at places. Like that's where all of a sudden, like there's a lot of hidden calories, there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of things that I can't necessarily like estimate. So for the people that I've worked with that were trying to get in shape and they eat the majority of their meals out, I was like, man, this is going to be an extremely difficult process.
Yeah. And one of the things when I first start working with a client and I go through some questions and try and get some information, one of the things I always ask is, who does the shopping, who does the cooking? And if you do the shopping and you do the cooking, are you cooking or shopping for anybody else? And I know, it could just be significant other, could be having kids. Like the more people that are in your whatever living space, the more influences come into what you eat. And so if it is a case where maybe the significant other is a little bit standoffish or maybe not as supportive, a lot of that I think can be taken care of just through conversation. Because what I've run into in the past are a couple different scenarios where, I'm starting to work with somebody and they feel like their significant other is a barrier. Well, in some cases it's because there's not necessarily like deep-rooted jealousy, but like, oh, you're doing this and I'm not. And their significant other feels like they need to lose weight too. And so then kind of just talk about how you can do it together. Or there's the case where, and this is what like common or like the modern day healthy at every size thing is kind of pushed, is like their significant other is like, oh no, you don't need to do this. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's two things to unpack there. There's one, need, and then the other is want. sometimes they do need to do this. Sometimes people do need to lose weight for their health because there's, seriously compromised health. But more than the need for me is the want. If somebody wants to lose weight and they have weight to lose, right? If it's going to be a move towards greater metabolic health or whatever, it doesn't matter what they need. If they want it, then we just need to kind of figure out, can we support their wants and is it going to affect things? And so usually just through a lot of conversation and kind of getting people's perspectives across and understanding why we're doing what we're doing. Because oftentimes, especially with people who have families and things, what I've found, they want to lose the weight because of their family. They want to be there for their family, right? And I want to be healthier. The thing I hear all the time, especially when working with dads, is like, man, I want to be a good example for my kids. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to play with them when they get older, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so what can cause a little bit of tension in the beginning, I think usually through just some conversations with everybody involved can kind of mellow out, and then everybody's on board. And yeah, because you do need, if you have a spouse or significant other, you need their support. I mean, that's like your number one. My wife is kind of like you. She's like, well, Ben, you're a doctor of exercise physiology. You do all this nutrition coaching and stuff. Like, I need to look the part too. And it's like, well, no, you were healthy like this before I met you, kind of why I was attracted to you. And I'm going to lean on you because when I'm doing this. So when we started, case in point, when we started this thing up this week, she was like, can I do it too? I was like, yeah, I mean, sure. I'll run your macros, I guess, but she doesn't need it. But yeah, having that significant other support is huge, because then even going back to what you were saying, John, when you go out to eat, you're both in the kind of the same mentality. So you choose places that might be better than others, right? It's like, okay, we'll look at some menus ahead of time.
Well, yeah. So we have two levers, obviously my wife, and then, because of Cash being type 1, there's a certain diet that he's on. So a big part of like whenever we're looking to go anywhere, there's always like looking at the menu ahead of time and being like, okay, like what can Cash have? And there's a few restaurants that he can kind of like there's one here called Picnic that has like what they call like on like an autoimmune menu, and it's like you can get like guacamole with like with vegetables instead of chips. I mean, so there's all these like little kind of levers that they pull. Everything they cook is like gluten free and this, and it has like this whole list, and you can kind of ask specific. So that's been like a godsend, and that's his favorite spot. But like we go out to other places, and also, just on a side note, this was a statement that Dr. Sabine made to me when we were out at her office in California. She said that the people that she looks at, when she does their stool samples and their analysis, the people that eat at home the majority of time are dramatically healthier than the people that don't. The people that eat most of their food that comes from like Uber Eats and like the meal deliveries, they cook that, and then you don't know how long from the time it's cooked, it sits in here and this. He's like, you got some guy on a motorbike, it's getting hit with fumes. Like she's like the lack of gut health as it relates to people that don't cook is dramatically different. So she's like, the people that can cook, that eat the majority of food at their home and they go out and shop and they cook and they do all this, like those people, she's like, I can look at their profile and I can tell you within an inch of their life. Like, I'll just give you an example. When we were going through my gut, she put mine side by side with Doc U. Dr. Philip Yu, who's been on this podcast, stem cell expert and a good friend from California. Doc Yu works a lot of long hours. He tends to do a lot of Korean barbecue takeout, and he's also powerlifting. So he's in this kind of like bulking mentality.
Constantly bulking.
Yeah, he's constantly bulking, and he's Korean and he likes Korean barbecue. So he's got 4 or 5 of these Korean barbecue places that he hits for takeout, and there's a certain microbe that's associated with high protein and eating a lot of meat. So we were both kind of high in that one, but then his parasite level was dramatically higher, and he wouldn't mind me talking about this. But his parasite level was like, whatever the 30% was. Mine was like a 0.03. And she's like, I can tell that you eat a high protein diet and the majority of food you eat is at home and you cook it yourself, because the parasites happen from food that's been sitting longer and this. And she kind of went through the deal, and she's like, if you want to improve this, you got to eat the majority. And he's like, I'm running between 3 different offices. I'm trying to get to powerlifting. I hit these different spots. And she's like, well, you either can make a change or you can continue down this road. But that was like one of the indicators of health that she put out. So it's definitely, if you're trying to get shredded, you're trying to lean out, you're trying to get in shape, being able to meal prep and cook at home is a massive, massive fucking advantage over those that don't.
Well, and you know, like I said, a lot of people just don't know how, and I can understand that. But in the world today with YouTube, you can learn how to, you know, if you find a recipe and you don't know how to prepare it, just YouTube, how do I spatch cook a chicken, right? And so the problem though is people, they swing super far, right? Hey, I want to get healthy, so I'm just going to get super healthy. And they try and do all these big, you know, elaborate recipes and things like that. And it's like, you've gone from never cooking for yourself to now you're trying to cook these like Michelin star meals for yourself. Like, let's find some happy medium there. Let's just, you know, brown up a whole bunch of ground beef, you know, get a big old, you know, Power Athlete used to talk about like the big ass salad, right? Mm-hmm. Just go get some greens, some peppers, some tomatoes, mushrooms, put them in a big salad bowl and just put that in your fridge. And then
do you know where we got that from? Do you know where we got that from?
No.
It's from Seinfeld. It's from Elaine. Do you remember the big salad? Like,
oh, yeah.
They remember. She's like, "Do you have a big salad?" And like that was like, remember them? They can't go to their favorite restaurant for some whatever reason because of George. She's like, they don't have a big salad. So that was the joke. Is like, you know, you got to have like a big salad. What's kind of interesting, and like I like, and this is where this whole kind of fine tuning thing, and this is kind of a little bit where Dr. Sabine kind of melted my brain a little bit. You know, being able to like, so what happens to a lot of people when they want to get in shape, it's easier to kind of glob on to a certain like diet ideology. Like, I'm going to go carnivore. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And people kind of go all in on this. And like, you know, we've always kind of fit within this idea of like, you know, like energy balance. I could easily be 400 pounds on a paleo diet. I would sit down and eat nothing but like crock pot meat. Like when I bulked up to like 325 after I retired and I started doing all that West Side stuff and I wanted to get big and strong, I was going to squat 1,000 pounds. I started taking like 5 to 6 pounds of meat and I threw all these root vegetables in a crock pot and I just ran that crock pot nonstop for like 3 months. I don't even think I cleaned it. It just stayed hot and I just kept throwing more and more meat in and just more and more. And I would just eat out of the crock pot. And I remember, one morning I went to get up and I couldn't roll out of bed. I was kind of stuck on my back like a big turtle. And my wife's like, how much are you weighing? And I'm like, I don't know, like 270, 265. And she's like, there's no fucking way, dude. Look at the dent in the bed. And there was just like a huge dent. And I stepped on, it was like 326. And I was like, holy shit. And I was eating 100% paleo diet. I was just eating probably 600 grams of carbohydrates from sweet potatoes, Greek yogurt and like all these different root vegetables and meat. I think I was at like 450 grams of protein. I mean, I was it was a glorious time. But you know, like there was a feeling back in the day that like you can't overeat on a paleo diet. It's really hard to get big and bulky on a paleo diet. And I'm like, no, I did it. I put on easily 30, 40 pounds on a paleo diet. I remember years ago, I went to this kind of paleo thing with Rob Wolf, and there were some guys there that were big paleo, low carb guys, and they were pretty kind of obese. And I asked Rob, I was like, Rob, these guys are low carb paleo guys. Why are they so fat? He's like, because they eat like starved hogs. And that was classic Rob Wolf. And I think about that pretty constant when especially as we're trying to like roll into this thing that like, hey, do not eat like a starved hog. Like, do not just hook your face up to the fucking trough and just go to town. And you have to, at least for me, I have to portion control because like my perception of food, like realizing that like an 8-ounce portion of sweet potato is probably right around 90 to 100 grams of carbohydrate. Like, and then actually portioning out what like that 7-8 ounces looks like is like one slice like this big. So, and then like sitting down. So it's, I recommend anybody that's going to try to, you know, that wants to lean out, that wants to try to get in shape, that wants to look at their macros, like they have to have a scale, they have to measure, and they have to like be able to do it like with one ingredient. Because the problem is when you start getting into like, you know, prepackaged foods or some of these other things, they can be plus or minus 30%. We had a food company, you know, I still work with the guys from Tactic Calories pretty closely. And when you do those food nutritionals and you get it back from the food scientist, that can always be plus or minus 30%. So let's say you turn on and this thing says it's got 200 calories. It could have 260, could have 140, you know?
Yeah. And it's on both ends actually. So there's that estimation, but then, the way we find macros and energy balance, that's all an estimation too. So people need to be aware of that. And you mentioned something about having the scale, and then I'll say like counting calories. That's another thing that's been kind of demonized. People want to talk about like diet culture, and just counting calories in and of itself is not inherently bad. The way I talk to people about it is like when you go to the gas station, there's a meter when you're filling up the car because you need to know how much fuel is in your car. And then when you're in your car, you have the fuel gauge. If you just went blind with that and had no idea, how often do you think you'd be filling up? You'd be filling up all the time because you'd have no idea how close to empty you are. Mm-hmm. And so you have to count the amount of fuel that you're putting in your body. And that's just the unit that we use for that is the kilocalorie. So there's nothing inherently wrong. Now, I'm fully aware, especially, with my background in swimming, there are a lot of people who have had experiences where counting calories has really messed with their head and things like that. And so that's where that behavioral side comes in, where it's like, okay, let's kind of detach this, the amount of calories. If we can just look at food as fuel, and people might say like, well, that, I enjoy eating. I don't want it to become a chore. Do you enjoy the actual eating, or do you enjoy the social experience of being around people and all that? Because we can find other ways to do that. But if you enjoy the actual act of eating, well, that probably means that there's something going on, typically some emotional baggage there that we need to talk about because it's kind of hijacking your health. So yeah, I'm a big believer in, at the very minimum, counting calories, because then even if you're like, hey, we had a work meeting off campus and we went out to lunch, so I had to go off plan in terms of macros, but I was able to keep it in my calories. Well, cool. The needle's still going to be moved in the right direction, right? So counting calories is necessary to make progress, because that's what this is. It's just math. And if you can reduce it down to that, that typically removes out the emotion, right? We're not talking about if you're good or bad for making the choices. It's just a math game.
We had a guy named Tom Furman on the podcast years ago, and he was a kind of a life coach, fitness, did a lot of stuff, got a lot of people in shape. And he made a great point where he said, if you can manage a spreadsheet, you can get shredded. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And he kind of dropped that bomb. And I've always thought about that, like being able to kind of manage this. What I do, just because I'm not real good about gauging macros and calories when we go out to eat, right? Like I'm like, I don't know what that is. And so what I end up doing is I just miss a few meals. Like if I know we're going out to dinner, I'll get up and eat, and I kind of eat light through the day. And I know that I'm probably going to overeat on dinner. So I just make sure that I have enough buffer in calories, and I'm pretty good. Like I know what 12 ounces of steak looks like, especially if I eat this and this. And so in my head, I can kind of be like, all right, I'm going to give myself like a 1,500, maybe 1,750 calorie buffer if I want to have a drink, or let's say have a margarita, because a margarita might have anywhere from 180 to 250 grams calories in it. So I'll be like, all right, I know that I can eat let's say 2 margaritas is going to be 500 calories, and I can eat this, and I kind of do this weird math game where I'm like, I just know how many calories I have. I just kind of eat, kind of anticipate for it, make sure I get some cardio done. I'll get on the bike and I'll ride for 30 minutes. If I can kill let's say 350 calories, and I know in my head I'll be ahead. And then I tend to and then also, many years ago, I had a Russian buddy who's told me that the difference between Americans and Russians is Americans eat one bite full, Russians eat one bite hungry. And that's why Americans were fat. He said, in Russia, you always leave one bite hungry. I want to take that next bite, but I'm just going to leave it. Whereas Americans take that bite and then the next one, to where they're overly full. And so he said, if you want to be in good shape, just always go one bite hungry. So I always tend to undereat a little bit and then try to take it home. And but I do like leftovers, which never is a problem.
Yeah, I felt your strategy firsthand when I was down there, and when we were going to see Victor's fight, and we didn't eat all day. And in my head, I'm like, fuck, I'm hungry right now. Why aren't we eating? But then I didn't know because we're going to have a couple beers there, and then we're going to go to In-N-Out afterwards. But all day I was like, why are we not eating right now?
Because we went to In-N-Out, we had double doubles, and we had milkshakes, which will totally fucking throw this whole thing off.
Yeah. So, but no, that's the thing. And that's something actually, that's really interesting, what your Russian friend said. I really like that, because that's something we're working with our daughters on right now is, I tell them, because especially our 4-year-old, she's like a garbage disposal. She'll just eat and eat and eat. And I'm trying to teach them that it's okay to be hungry sometimes,
Yeah.
because she'll get out of bed at like 9:30 and be like, I'm still hungry. And it's like, it's okay. You can be a little hungry.
She should call me. Me too. She's
Yeah.
like, hold on. She's like, are you hungry? I'm like, I'm totally hungry. I'm just going to go to bed.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to do. But yeah, no, it's hard because, again, what were we? I mean, I don't know about you, but I was raised a clean plate club, right? Clean your plate. And it's like, you know what? There's
eat
like
what you want, but it's take what you want, but eat what you take. That's what we heard as kids.
Yeah. And the idea of like, oh, starving children in Africa, it's like, hey, guess what? If you don't finish your meal, that food's not getting to Africa anyway. So don't try and adopt those mindsets. If you're not hungry, you're not hungry. And that's okay. Because that's the other thing. I think people have this rigid idea of, okay, I need to eat 3 or 4 or 5 meals every day, but our body doesn't work. Our body doesn't reset every 24 hours. It's just always going. So yeah, if you overeat today, you're probably okay maybe putting breakfast off or whatever the next day. Like it works on this continuum. It's constantly going. And when you zoom out, I like to tell my clients, like, well, let's just zoom out to like 2 weeks. What did our last 2 weeks look like? Were we pretty much in the average, were we averaging what we wanted to get over the course of 2 weeks? Then we're doing good. But if you zoom in on a micro, that's just not how our body works. It doesn't work on a small 24-hour scale. Do
you think looking at the calories over the course of a week makes a lot more sense than looking in that kind of that micro where you're like looking at it through the day? So when the way I track everything is in MyFitnessPal. I've used some other ones. I just tend to like MyFitnessPal because I've used it the longest and it has kind of the foods that I tend to eat and the amounts. But like, let's say for example, it's like 3,500 calories is what I need. I tend to always hit my protein, but like I always tend to undereat on that because I know just, like if I let's say it's 3,500 calories, I'm never going to eat right up to 35. I'm always going to leave a few calories on the bottom side because I'm always pretty sure that like, even though I'm weighing and measuring, I'm pretty exact, like there might be more calories than less. And so one of the things which, don't sit around and look at it and be like, hey, I got 20 grams of fat. I'm going to sit down now. I'm going to eat 2 slabs of, or 2 tablespoons of butter to make up for my fat. I just look at it and be like, well, I didn't get enough fat. Cool. Did I get my protein? Everything else is fine. And like, that's what I did last night. I was low on carb, but I had kind of like planned it a little bit because I like putting a tablespoon of honey in the yogurt. That's like my home run. And so I like purposely underate all my carbs earlier in the day so I'd be able to get like a nice big piece of of a tablespoon in the yogurt. And I remember I sat down to eat it. And Cash was like, what is that? That smells so good. And I was like, I can't give you this because your blood sugar will go to 300 and you'll look like you're going to stroke out. But I mean, like I think that there's interesting ways to kind of like couch this. And it's kind of a little bit of a game. Like how close can I get? Can I undereat? Like I like the game of 5P thing. And then the other thing too, and what's fun with some of the things that we do is like, being able to do something like Hammer 90, where now you have a group of people that are doing it. You're not this kind of solo warrior. I know for me, whenever we've done any kind of challenges and some of the stuff that we're doing with Ben and the guys, having a group of individuals in that shared suffering is so important. So you don't feel like you're doing this alone. It's good for camaraderie. And for me, it's like, I know that if somebody else is grinding and working hard, and it's something that we talked about on the podcast recently with, what was the guy's name yesterday that with the book Ballistic? Henry Abbott. Yeah, Henry Abbott. He made an interesting point that humans can basically do anything and can like weather any form of suffering. He's like the amount of like dire situations that humans have been in where they've somehow come out the other side. Like your arm gets, like the dude whose arm got stuck in like that boulder and he basically took a pocket knife, cut his arm off and walked for like 18 days in the wild and still survived. Like the amount of like stories of like humans succeeding in the spite of things. Like when they did there was that study where they basically brought in really obese people that were like hundreds of pounds overweight. I want to say the guy was like 400 or 500 pounds and they basically gave him no food.
Oh yeah. And just the vitamin and water.
Yeah. For a year. And like he stopped defecating. He didn't eat. He wasn't hungry and pretty much came out the other side at the end of that year on that study. And he was like had lost like 200 and some pounds, and they were like, blew their mind that he didn't die. So I think what happens is that the reward center works in such a way that I don't think that people have the concept of like physically how durable they are and how much suffering they can take through.
Yeah. And I mean, that's because on the other hand, right, we can withstand a whole bunch, but we don't, evolution drives us to not want to. We want to have a comfortable life. And this ties in with nutrition too. Our body doesn't want to lose weight. Our body doesn't want to gain weight. It just wants to stay where it is. And
Why is that? I mean, is there like a physiological, like, I mean, is it a survival evolutionary thing? Like, why is it that the body like fights for homeostasis in this position?
I mean, that's because everything, sometimes in physiology, we talk about like set points. All these processes that are going on have these like internal set points, and they're not really points. They're like little ranges that they want to work within. And what I'm talking about here are like enzymatic reactions and things like that. And just the slightest shift in things like body temperature or, we can talk about pH or things like that can throw some of these enzymatic actions off. And so our body wants to preserve those functions. Now, the problem with nutrition that we're seeing, especially in modern times, is our body, if it's stressed, and gaining and losing weight are both stress. If it's stressed long enough, just like with lifting weights, it'll reset that kind of set point or that set range. So if you're somebody who's been gaining weight slowly and slowly and slowly, where your body has had time to adapt to that, and that's its new homeostasis. And yeah, it's just an internal survival mechanism. Our body just wants to make sure everything functions properly.
Is it, one of the interesting things whenever like weight loss, if you look at anything on the internet today, if you put in like just into the Google machine, you start talking about weight loss, one of the first things that's going to pop up with all the sponsors is all the GLP-1s. And we've talked about the GLP-1s ad nauseum. But part of what those things are able to do is actually change the reward center and the serotonin, and there's this kind of behavior modification. Is that behavior modification for some people, because this is a weird one that I had never really come across, and like Parsley mentioned it. I ended up writing it down and went back and actually talked to a few different people that I know that have, been within this weight loss, and like, ended up kind of going onto the GLP-1s, the idea of food noise. So this is something I have never experienced, where like I have this like fuzzy kind of like, almost like food noise, where you have this constant thought in the back of your head of like, there's cookies, there's this and this. And so when it was explained to me, I was like, that's not a real thing, just because, as we say, we fail at the margins of our experience. And it was actually my wife that was like, oh, this is a real thing. I think about food constantly. Like, I know that there's cookies in there, and like, I want to eat them all the time. And I'm like, really? I was like, I don't think about food until I know that it's like my preset timed for meals. Like, I know, like I eat a pre-workout meal, I eat a post-workout meal, and then I eat lunch, and then I, eat like a little, and then I'll look at my macros and I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be too much for dinner. I got to eat a little bit now. So I'm like, kind of like constantly gaming this thing. But like, if it's 5 meals, 4 meals, 3 meals, 2 meals, 1 meal, like it like that doesn't affect me. And especially if I do some fasting and I eat like one big meal, which is what I tend to do on the weekends. Like on a Sunday, I'll probably like wake up, do some like aerobic work, go for a walk, do whatever I need to do. And then I kind of just eat dinner. I'm more excited to eat dinner, but it's not as if I have this like constant food noise. And so she was the one that explained it to me. And then when I talked to a couple people that were on the GLP-1s, they were like, this knocked out this food noise. Like, I don't have this like constant feeling in the back of my head that, there's food out there I need to be consuming. And I just remember thinking like, that would be fucking awful. If, like that would be, but also I wonder if that's, from being an athlete and playing football and like eating every meal, like it's my last meal, trying to put on as much weight. I probably like rid myself of that by over consuming calories for as long as I did.
Well, that's what I was just thinking about, was because like growing up, I was always in sports. So, and then through college. And so, yeah, it was always like my windows of time to eat were small, and I was always training or always trying to compete or something like that. So I think I don't know, for a long time, as long as I can remember, I kind of thought of it as food as fuel, like just never really like just sat down and like casually ate, I guess. So I wonder if there is a little bit of a learned or experienced behavior there where it's like, you know, you get that noise from being, I guess, like stagnant, or not being stagnant, but not having to be so structured with everything. Cause yeah, it was, I mean, I think about in college, I guess, it was like, well, I wake up, I have to eat at 5 a.m. because I know I have to train at 5:30, and then I have to eat breakfast because I have to go to class, but then I have class until about 1, and I'm going to eat lunch then because then I have to go to training, and training gets done and I'm going to have dinner. Well, then like I got to go to sleep early. So I got to, so I just never really had those times to be bothered by the noise, maybe because it doesn't happen to me. I'll ask my wife to see if she gets food noise. But no, that's interesting because that would be awful because food is everywhere. And so if you just had a constant signal of what was around you, that would drive me insane.
Yeah, that food noise thing, when Doc talked about like calming food noise and like that would be torture to like think of like, I mean, like it's like your daughters. And the interesting thing is your daughters, even as they get older, they're not going to change. Because my daughters still eat sometimes like 4 or 5 year olds. Like they'll go in and I call it the raccoons. So like what'll happen is I'll be like sitting at the computer, I'll be in the kitchen or somewhere, and I'll hear like patter, and then I'll hear like somebody go in the pantry, and it's like, and then like somebody will run out, and I'll be like, did we just get attacked by raccoons? And they'll go in there and they'll be like, like if Kate gets something, and she's pretty smart. They are, because they're twins, obviously, like I think that they are like in this constant like resource allocation thing where like if there's 6 cookies in there, 3 of those are mine, and I better eat the 4th because I don't, then somebody's going to eat. Like they're fucking crazy. But I try to tell them, I'm like, you guys need to stop eating like little kids. Like you guys are working with like little kid wiring, but are like adult, like hardware now. So like you need to kind of like grow up a little bit and like realize that like, just because there's 6 cookies in there doesn't mean that you have to eat 3 of them. You can have 1. And if somebody else eats the other 5, it's okay.
Yeah.
And like me saying this is like, what are you talking about? Stop with this. Like, I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like you can go have 1 cookie. And like, but then when I come back, there's gonna be no cookies. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you eat 3. Well, yeah, because I need half of this. So this is like the resource management thing that you're going to see with your girls. They're like so nervous that they're somehow going to get screwed out of a cookie. And I'm like, dude, you guys are like 13 going on 14 years old. Like you'll be fine. You don't need cookies all the time. And then I asked Kate, and Kate's like, I only buy cookies once a week, and they're gone usually within 10 minutes. So she's like, it's not like they're like, slowly enjoying them. They just go in there and crush cookies. And I'm like, oh God, like trying to explain this to them is like just trying to like explain Greek to them.
Well, so our 4-year-old, it's her birthday today. So she turned 4 today, and it's her birthday. So breakfast time is like, well, what do you want for breakfast? She wanted cucumbers. It's like, cool. You're having cucumbers for breakfast. But then our 5-year-old was like, well, then I want cucumbers too. And it's like, you don't want cucumbers for breakfast. You're just doing this because she wants. And it's like, it's just so funny. But they had cucumbers for breakfast, and they're probably starving right now because there's like 10 calories in a cucumber.
The other day I I asked Jamie, I'm like, Jamie, what are you having for breakfast? And she had 5 oranges.
Oh my God.
She had like because I bought these like really bitchin', like the tangerines are in season. So I bought like a bag of tangerines at the grocery store, and she took like 5 tangerines and was like peeling them. And I was like thinking, I'm like, you guys are still 5 years old in their minds. Like I was like, I don't know any adult that's like, would you have breakfast? 5 tangerines makes total sense.
Dude, you better watch out. She's going raw vegan on you, and you don't even realize it.
I wonder, and like I find it hysterical that you were a raw vegan, but there's never been a point in my life where I thought to myself, maybe a vegan diet would be a good move.
And you're just not hanging out with the right people, man. I was with a whole bunch of endurance athletes where getting as small as you can was the way to go. And I actually went down the rabbit hole. The dude is still up there. His YouTube is Durian Rider. Was dude out from Australia.
This like the 36 bananas guy?
Yeah, 30 bananas a day, for sure.
Yep, I remember.
And it's the same. I mean, there are people in the space, right, who just have very convincing like rhetoric. And I was 22 And I was like, yeah, no, this totally makes sense.
Yeah,
like the system is against us.
But like at 22, you're pretty impressionable. Now, if you told me you did this at 42, we'd have a big fucking problem.
Yeah. No, this was, it was like right place, right time.
And there's people in there that are in their 40s that are like, yeah, you know, this is the secret. I'm going to eat 400 cucumbers in a day. And you're like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, it's a wild community, man. They got me, but it also, I don't know. I look back on it and it's good. And that's the thing. It's like, this is why I enjoy working with people with nutrition. Cause it's like, man, I did it all. Like I've tried these things. And so it's not like I like to tell people I'm pretty agnostic about nutrition because it's like what works best is whatever works for you. But yeah, when I get in conversations with these folks who are 100% plant-based, it's like, hey, like there are some things that you're missing out on. And that's from my own experience. But yeah, dude, there's been times where I've had five oranges for breakfast. I get it. It happens sometimes.
Oh yeah. I just, and she was so proud. She's like, Dad, I'm having 5 oranges. And I was like, they're at like an interesting age. Like for example, I cooked last night. And so I cooked steaks, cut everything up, got everything ready for Cash. Like we ate everything. And then, the girls came down, they were studying for something. And so they ate later and, they were making pot stickers. Mm. So like they were like in there, like in the kitchen eating pot stickers. And I came in and I was like, pot stickers? And I went over and it was funny. I was like, really? Out of everything in the fridge, I cook steaks, there's this, everything in the fridge that's there. You guys decided that you wanted pot stickers. This is your food, 5 oranges and pot stickers. And I was like, this is just them exploring weird boundaries that I'm like, what fucking universe are you living in? And because when they were your girls' age, up until probably about the age of like maybe 10 or 11 or 12, we sat down and we ate every meal at the table, and they ate. And now that like because of sports and everything that we're running around, like we kind of like people eat at different times. Like I cook and then I, like, hey, like this is what's available if you want to eat this. And they're in this like, wow, I want to have this. And I'll be like, what the fuck are you cooking right now? Like Kelly made, she somehow had, cause Kate would get them these frozen meals. And I want to say it was like pad thai, but she was trying to heat it up and like cook the peanut sauce and like skunked all the pans. And I was like, so I have this rule. Don't touch my cast iron. Like I have a cast iron Dutch, like Dutch oven, and then I got like 2 cast iron pans, and I'm like, you guys can abuse anything other. Don't cook with the cast iron. And even my wife, I'll see her like take it out, like my heart stops for a second. I'll be like, do you know what you're doing? Are you qualified to be using my cast iron? Because if not, we're going to have a huge fucking problem. And she'll be like, it'll be fine. And I'll be like, don't cook your disgusting chicken in my cast iron. Like use one of your other, like I am very, territorial where like I've seasoned these pans, I've cooked them, I've nurtured them, I've brought them along. They have like the perfect hue. They cook perfect. Like I have a weird relationship where I've like cultivated these pans, and like anybody touches them, I'm like, you're going to need a tutorial on how to take care of these things. Like I feel like I'm like an old Italian grandmother who's over there like, don't touch my stuff. But the same thing, like for knives too. Like I have like a roll of knives, like a Neil Kamamura chef's knives that Neil gifted me, that I have in my roll that like I put back in my roll. I don't put out just for the fact that I don't want anybody to use them. And like you said, like, having like a process and having your own pans, having your own knives, like being able to like manage your space. I got cutting boards, like everything that I use. I mean, I have this bitchin' cutting board that Casey from Tacticalories, his dad made me that like is perfectly seasoned. And then I had a bigger one that Jim Smith, who's a friend of ours from back home. So I take a lot of pride in not only like in my day for meal prep and for everything is on Sunday. I get up early. We get done what I need to get done. And then I usually take a drive, and I have a couple different places I hit different than my wife. And then she goes to the grocery store and kind of buys stuff. And I go and I kind of meal prep for me and for Cash, and then get everything ready. And then I plan all my meals, and it provides me a sense of like just nice and calm. Like if I don't have anything prepped ahead of time, or there's nothing there and I got to like scramble and this, I just don't do well. I like need to like know over the course, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this is what I'm going to cook. This is what I'm going to have. And I do much better as a human if I have all of my meals laid out. And I wasn't like that for a long time, but I wonder if this is just like it's not OCD. It's just, I like what I like and I want what I like and I want to be able to do it in such a way where everything's good. And the other issue though is, because the meat I buy is good. I mean, we get stuff from Augustus Ranch, and like, Texas meat traders, and I've made friends with all these people and I get what I like and I cook it really well. And I got a bunch of different medians to cook it with a big green egg and a gas grill. And then also have this bitch and Traeger to smoke things. And like, I like how stuff, and it's kind of funny. I saw a meme once that like when guys get over the age of 40, they either like get really into barbecuing or they get like really like, or they get into golf or different things. I'm not necessarily into barbecuing, but like, I don't want to have a shitty meal. And especially when we go out to dinner, a lot of times, like we'll go to certain places and Kate will be like, how was it? I'll be like, it was good. Like I purposely don't order things at restaurants that I cook well, because I don't want to feel like, this sucked. Like, hey, dude, I cook a better steak. My steak tastes better. So I tend to look for things that I don't cook, which is usually like a fish or maybe some other dishes. And it just helps me a little bit with the meal prep. Whereas now I don't feel like, fuck, we just went and spent, a whole bunch of money and their steak wasn't nearly as good as the one I make. Yeah,
that's actually an interesting strategy too, because I talk to people about like if you're gonna go out, or sometimes I'll say like if you're gonna blow calories, make sure it's on something like worthwhile. So yeah, I can cook burgers at home, so I don't need to go to McDonald's to get a hamburger, right? Because I can do that easily. Same thing with like the sweet stuff. Some people are like, oh, like I just couldn't help myself. I grabbed a Snickers when I was checking out at the gas station. It's like, what? Like that's so low order. Like that's not like, if you're gonna put down 400 calories on some sweet thing, go to a bakery, go get something fucking delicious, and don't settle for a Snickers. So yeah, same thing. Like if you build this habit or build these behaviors of cooking for yourself, then you do go out there and it's like, well, why would I want to spend $40 on something I can cook at home for $10? And, it just, you start to build those kind of thought processes. And then I think it also makes going out to eat more enjoyable, because then you kind of seek out new things. Like things that I can't cook, or things that, whether it's like food that isn't fresh around us or actual cooking techniques. It's like, oh, I want to go to that place to try this because I can't do it.
There's a really cool spot here in Austin called Kanji that has an island. It's kind of like what do you call it? Like a Caribbean type restaurant. And so when I lived in Philly many, many years ago, I ended up meeting a lady, like a kind of light-skinned black lady who was a private chef. And she would like cooked for all these different people, and she would, give her a list that she would meal prep and cook, make, and then drop everything off. And then a few nights a week, she had like a little storefront that she would just like, text me and be like, hey, I'm open in the restaurant. Like, what do you want? And I would just text her what I want. And then I would swing by there after work and I would eat. And it was all kind of like this Caribbean. And dude, she would make the best fucking food. It was like these little like little like hand kind of fritters things that she would deep fry. I mean, the food was incredible. So I have this pretty strong affinity for like Caribbean, like jerk chicken and just anything from that. Like, and so my wife's not a huge fan of all that, but there's this place called Kanji here in Austin that's as close to her cooking as I've come across. And like, that's a good spot for me. Like I go there because it's flavors that I don't necessarily cook with. It's things that like I'm not going to traditionally take the time to make, and it's just like outside, like just for me for the meal prep, and like I like some of that stuff. I mean, Casey's Tacticalories. For those of you guys that are listening, I am a huge fucking advocate and fan of Tacticalories, and the reason being is the way that Casey does his grind is a little bit like it. Like most spices are really fine ground, like fine grind, almost like dust powder. Casey does this coarse grind on all of his stuff, and it's so much better. And it's just like, I haven't found anybody else that does it, but it's probably because it's very similar to the way that she did all her spices. It was always coarse ground. And so, whether it's like seasoning the chicken, like Primal SPG or any of the stuff, like he just sent me, one of the new products, like the re-releases, is called Pie Slayer, and it's a organic kind of pizza sauce. Ooh. So tomorrow I got to get up and go over to the farmer's market because they sell these gluten-free sourdough frozen pizza crusts at the farmer's market I go to, and I'll score a couple of those because if we're going to make pizza at home, I'm like, dude, we're going to make good pizza. So I go up, I get those crusts, and and I'm pretty excited to try his pizza sauce. But it's like that to me is big. Like I want to go out and eat something. Like I do enjoy going to a steakhouse, but I don't want to go to a steakhouse because I cook steak and I'm pretty good at cooking meats. I mean, dude, like, we had Jason Ellsworth come and cook for us at the Collective. I mean, Ellsworth absolutely fucking slayed that. I mean, we got all those tri-tips from Texas Meat Traders. Darren, who's my boy, who literally texted me this morning, hey, when are you coming in? I got some steaks for you. Like that to me, like, dude, Ellsworth cooks. If you guys go on Instagram, Jason is an absolute phenomenal big game chef. Like those guys came and absolutely fucking slayed it. And, that meal and like, I can go downtown and spend $500 and it's never going to be as good. So like you said, for the same thing for me, I want to go out to dinner and try foods and try things that I don't necessarily cook. I'm just not going to go out and do the Pepsi challenge all the time. And I get pissed when I do, people are like, oh, let's go to a steakhouse. I'm like, like Jay Carver's great. Every time we go there, like they have bone marrow, they got a lot of cool things. But like when the steak comes, I'm always a little underwhelmed because I think I cook a better steak than them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? And so building those skill sets, that's kind of the learning curve. You build the skill sets, like learning how to cook, learning how to set up your kitchen so you can cook, things like that. And then I feel like the nutrition game gets easier after that because now you know what you're capable of, right? And maybe you're not, on par with like Bobby Flay, but you can still cook a pretty damn good steak. So then you're more convinced to like, hey, Friday night, instead of how we normally go out and have steak, but then we also have drinks and have dessert and all that kind of stuff. What about we just cook some steaks here for the change, and by improving your abilities, improving your capabilities, the nutrition side of things tends to become a little bit easier, but it takes time and it takes repeated efforts to get there because it just doesn't come easily right away.
Do you think that there's a point in the future where maybe Power Athlete has maybe like a course, or maybe we do a weekend or like meal prep? I know we've been talking to MCK a little bit about doing some like online courses about like, setting up your kitchen, how to shop. I was very fortunate. I was my mom's sous chef growing up. So my mom was a great cook. My mom cooked every meal. Like we ate a majority of food at home, which was most people in the 70s and the 80s. Our idea of like eating out was like getting Domino's pizza one night a week. But for the majority, we ate most of our meals at home. And I ended up helping my mom as her sous chef. And so I learned to cook. And I remember my dad was terrible at cooking. Like he knew that there was a place that sold food. He just had never been there. So we had a barbecue and he absolutely butchered like anything that was on that barbecue. So from the time I was probably 8 or 9, I was the grill man. Like we would go out, fire it up. Like I cooked burgers. Like we would get these sleeves of burgers from, well, at the time it was called Price Club, but what became Costco. These sleeve of burgers, and we'd like pop them off, put them on this, and like just like work short order cook. And like from the time I was 8 or 9, man, I worked the grill and like I like seasoned stuff. I fucked a lot of things up. I overcooked everything. I mean, to the point where like I have a spider sense. I can like touch it, and based upon like the feet, like you can like, this is well done. This is kind of like medium rare. Like I can kind of touch, like based upon like the feel of the meat, I know exactly what it is. And but like we just learned how to do it. And I remember my mom making a point once, and she's like, you have to learn how to cook, because if not, you're going to starve, because girls in the future will not know how to cook. And like, she's not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, so to answer, yes, I think if we're trying to help people with nutrition, I think a cooking skills or a kitchen skills course is probably going to be the biggest needle mover, because exactly that. I was the same way growing up, and we ate all of our meals at home until I was able to drive, because then I would just pick myself up dinner after practice or whatever sometimes. But for the most part, it was always cooked at home. And just by watching my mom, you pick some things up. And now, because people are working more, because there is more readily accessible things through like Uber Eats and stuff like that. I think they're either forgetting how to cook, or they never learned how to cook, or now my worry is this future generation are being raised on Uber Eats and takeout and things like that. They're never going to have a chance to learn how to cook. So I do think it goes back to empowering people, right? Same thing you did with training, whatever, a decade plus ago. It's you are teaching people you're not only giving programming, which in nutrition world would be macros, right? That's the simple stuff. But you've also taught people how to lift. You've taught people how to move athletically, how to train athletically. Same thing in the kitchen. We can give you all the macros. We can tell you, 1 ounce of beef is about 7 grams of protein. But the next step is teaching how to actually use those tools or use those things to actually drive the change. So it's empowering performance just in the kitchen. But yeah, I think, I hope, you and I have been talking with Dave. I hope Dave does run with that idea, because I think it's pretty unique in the space. He's got a pretty unique skill set with his background and his friends that he knows in that space. So that would be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean I feel like nutrition is always the blind spot. And, there's one of the issues too, especially in this idea of you think about, and I'll just give you a little bit of perspective. So the bodybuilder guys I used to train with back in the day when I lived in Newport and Orange County, was playing the NFL, I used to train with these two bodybuilders that were big, strong dudes, and they were like great workout partners because they were strong as shit. And one of the things that was interesting was over like in the off season when they were just training, trying to get big and bulky, they consumed a lot of supplements and a lot of like shakes and drinks and this. And they used to have a shake that they would call the kitchen sink that they would take post training with their insulin shots. So they would hit like a big thing of like, they would do like a pre-insulin, pre-training shot. Then they would drink this like peri-workout stuff. And then it had like carbs and shit in. And then they would get done and they would hit their insulin. And they would drink this like massive fucking shake called the kitchen sink, where they would throw like protein and carb and creatine and like anything they could get in that shake they would do. And it was probably like 800 or 1,000 grams of or calories, right? And it was fucking massive. And then they would like take the shot, like 10 to 15 minutes later, they would knock this thing back, and you'd see these dudes just fucking blow up. I mean, it was crazy. Like the insulin would just shuttle the nutrients into the muscles, and so they did a lot of shakes, and it was pretty interesting. Like I remember all of a sudden they had 16 weeks to this show, and they this was the first day. All of a sudden these dudes had like food containers. Like I had never seen them. They had like the chicken in one and here, and they were like, I'm like, what the fuck happened to the shakes? And they were like, you can't get lean on that shit. They were like, dude, like we can do that in the off season. We're trying to get big and bulky, trying to get extra calories. But if you need to lean out, you need to chew your food and you need to eat real food. You get dramatically leaner and in much better shape eating real food. So that's another thing too. When people get into this, they kind of start doing this like give and take. If it fits my macros, like I'm going to eat a protein bar, I'm going to have a shake. And my rule is like 1 shake a day. So I'll do anywhere from, I think it's like 75 grams, 3 scoops of protein. And I'll do that like once a day. And I either do it in like my pre-workout window or my post-workout window. Like if if I'm training at like, let's say like noon or 2 o'clock, I'll eat eat my meals and then I'll do a shake after. If I'm training at 8 a.m., I'll get up and have a shake before and then I'll eat after. And so I kind of like only do that 1 shake, but that's a big thing that I used to push to a lot of the people when I was doing nutrition stuff is like, if you got to lean on some form of like liquid protein and to try to figure out like a smoothie, a shake, we're gonna have problems. Like I need you to eat real food. And really also where that came from was a lot of girls that we were, at the time was like, oh, I'm going to go get a smoothie. And you're like, okay, that green juice smoothie you have now has like 150 grams of carbohydrate. It's got a bunch of fat because you got like peanut butter in this, and they're putting maybe a scoop or 2 of like hemp protein, which has like 40 grams. And then you wonder why all of a sudden I'm not leaning out, because that shake has a ton of calories that you can't fucking deal with.
Yeah, no, that's, a friend of mine, her name's Megan Stone, she posted something a while ago, and I'm going to butcher it, but it was like, you have to, before you can go easy on yourself, you have to show yourself that you can be hard on yourself, or something along those lines. And that's kind of the thing, like in a crunch for sure. Like if you're pretty dialed in with nutrition and, something's come up and you need to run down and go get like a protein shake from the gas station or something like that, that's fine, right? If you know that this isn't the norm. But yeah, I always put 30%. If more than 30% of your macronutrients, any of them, carbs, fat, protein, whatever, come from not real food, then that's a problem. Because not even just you need to chew food and all that kind of stuff, but everything else that comes with real food. So yeah, we look at like steak as protein, but steak is also B vitamins and iron and, good fatty acid profile, things like that. So there's a lot of other nutrients in foods, but when we kind of categorize them as just macros, we forget about that. And so that's like this whole intuitive eating, if it fits your macros, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I guess by the law of thermodynamics, sure. But in terms of setting up good behaviors, good behavioral changes that will let you sustain that nutrition, I don't think it works. And I say that having worked with a ton of people who have done the macro thing, and then they get off the macro thing and they get all that weight back. And it's because the behaviors to maintain whatever lifestyle they built during that just weren't reinforced.
So that's a good piece, right? Like, whenever anybody looks at, like, let's say leaning out or a cut or like something that we're talking about with like Hammer 90, right? Like, so I have this like 3 months where I'm going to do it, which, give or take should be somewhere a little over 12 weeks. So for the next 12 weeks, I'm going to like ratchet this thing down. I'm going to be, I'm going to get my workouts. I'm going to get all my, movement stuff. I'm going to eat all my calories. I'm going to do as prescribed for me, and I'm going to hit my goal. I don't think that people have a solution for what is day plus day one, right? So 12 weeks plus 1 day. What does it look like? Because just getting in shape, like for, let's say you got I could say, let's say you got a wedding or a photo shoot or something that you're going to do. Like, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life for this one moment, which I'm all for, right? Like, but think about like, now all of a sudden I've made this life change. I like the way I look, and I don't want to have to do this again. I'm going to use this. Like, I'll just give Arash, for example. When Arash started training with us, he was like 300 pounds. And he asked me, he's like, hey man, how can I improve my performance? And I was like, you have to lose weight. I was like, dude, like this excess fat that you have. And I think like it stung him a little bit because he was like, oh, you got to get stronger in this. I'm like, dude, you're plenty strong enough. Like you have plenty of skill. You just need to be a smaller version, a less fat version of yourself. And he like needed, and he's, we've become pretty close since then, but he's like, man, that stung, but I really needed to hear it. And then I was like, I got you. We're going to do this. And I told him, I'm like 12 weeks. And he ended up going from like 298, 300 and got down to 248. I mean, we'd lost pretty close to 50 pounds in that 12 weeks. And he has not put that weight back on. And then I asked him, I was like, what happened? And he's like, I had this moment that I never had before when I realized that nothing tastes as good as being thin. And when he said that, it was like a fucking truck hit me, because you know who said that same thing? Callie Hinsman. Callie said that to me when we were doing 22 Jack Street and we were dieting. She's like, I'm real hungry. I'm like, you gonna get something to eat? She's like, no, nothing tastes as good as being thin. And I was like, God, I fucking love that. I love like the grind in this, and like especially when we were doing 22 Jack Street, we were so deep in that cut, trying to just sabotage, because Luke was trying to gain 10%. And so he was coming in with like 20 tacos, just smashing them. And Callie and I are over there with like boiled chicken and like rice, trying to get in shape. And it was really, actually, that was super beneficial, because I realized that if you want to bulk, it's better to do like a 500 calorie, 750 calorie surplus than all of a sudden double your calories. Luke was, went from probably a maintenance of like 2,800, $3,000, was trying to eat 5 or 6. And he ended up putting on the 10%. I think he gained, what did he gain? He gained 30 pounds of body weight and did not increase any muscle.
Oof.
So he just put on 30 pounds of fat. And I remember we went to do the bod pod, and he didn't put on a single ounce of muscle. He was just crushed. He's like, I was hoping I was going to put on some muscle, and I went back and kind of reevaluated it because he had trained, he had been super consistent, had not done any aerobic work, which I think was a driver. But he was like to hit his calories. I mean, he hit his protein. He was eating so much fat and so much carb that I went back and looked, and I was like, you know what, man, like we can't make these recommendations anymore. Like there's got to be like a slower, the idea of like, hey, I'm going to pull 500 calories out of my diet and I'm going to do this kind of like 1 to 2 pounds a week. I think it's the same on the other side. If you got a bulk, you add 500 calories and you kind of do it slower over time, more so than just, hey, I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah. I always look at it as like it's a 2 to 1. So if you're given, 90, hammer 90, hammer 90 is going to be a weight loss challenge, right? So everybody's trying to lose weight. In that amount of time, I usually say perfect world. If we get it dialed in from day one, you can expect anywhere from like 8 to 10%. If it's a perfect world, you can hit that 10% change in body weight. So if you're coming in at 200 pounds, after that 90 days, we might see 180. On the other side, though, I think as hard as losing weight is, bulking and doing it effectively or efficiently, I think is damn near impossible sometimes because, it is such a fine line. Your body doesn't want to lose weight, but it really doesn't want to add muscle, because if it adds muscle, skeletal muscle is just an energy sink. Like your body, if it has muscle on it, it has to provide energy to that muscle. And that's why, like when I was doing all the running, I lost a decent amount of weight. My body composition didn't really change, but what happened was I was running so much, my body is essentially like scrapping the muscle that it didn't need, right?
Sure.
And so gaining or bulking over that same time period, that like 90 days, I would say in a perfect world, done smart, maybe 5 to 6% increase in body weight, because we could, easily double calories and just shoot up, but then it'd be like Luke's situation. But in my mind, that's not great. What you would like to do, people talk about like a lean bulk. Yeah, I would say kind of in line with you, 350 to 500 calorie bump.
Yep.
And match it with training, because if you're feeding your body just a little bit more, that just ensures like, okay, you have everything you need to grow, but you don't have this super surplus where you're going to dump it into energy stores like body fat.
Well, the other one, and I think where a lot of this stuff came from, was guys using a lot of anabolics and a lot of PEDs.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. Yeah, if your chemistry's right.
Yeah, like if you're taking enough drugs and you positive nitrogen balance and recovery in this, like all that shit that's getting thrown in the fire is turning into muscle. So I think a lot of this like kind of like big dirty bulk stuff where you got like the Sam Soliks that are chocolate milk and this, and they're like, how the fuck is this guy eating like this and getting shredded? And he's like, well, I mean, if you take enough gas on the front side of this, all the shit turns into fuel, which was Dave Tate. He was talking about like dieting on cinnamon rolls and, all this stuff. And Dave was fucking shredded, but he had John Meadows in his background and, the wizard fucking working the magic he needed. So I think when you start removing kind of the anabolic stuff and you have to look at this intelligently, I think, a very small surplus over the course of like giving yourself, 12, 14, 16 weeks to do this. And I am the worst offender of this. Like when I was 14 years old, 6 foot, 165 pounds, we need you to be 200 pounds that next year. And I literally showed up at 6'2", 200 that next year. And then the next year I was 6'3" as a junior, I think 225 pounds. And then as a senior, I was 6'4", 250 pounds. And then I got to college and I grew another inch and I was, 6'4" and a half, 6'5", and I weighed 275. And then and then I grew a little bit more and I was 300. And I think I wasn't 300 pounds until maybe my third year, but I was probably like 265, 285, 300. I mean, but I was also lucky in that I grew, obviously 6 inches. So it was helpful, but like we were on that seafood diet where anything we saw, we put into our mouth and we ate. And then all of a sudden I get done. I'm a senior a senior in college. And when I got in that first year in the NFL, I was probably 22% body fat. And that was when I got, I ended up getting hurt and then working with Dr. Deepa Squall and like that initial kind of like, hey dude, like there's no performance benefit for you to carry this much body fat. And I just didn't know how to diet and working with Dr. De Pasquale and doing his work, I mean, that really helped me kind of recomp into who I am. But like, there was a point there where it didn't really matter what weight was on the body as long as it showed the weight on the scale. And, you know, like that was just playing football. So I think for a lot of people, they don't have that same stuff. Hopefully, but it definitely, I want to say like small incremental changes. I was going to ask also, you know, just because this is, you know, like obviously going through this, like the pain points, but like what are some of the myths around eating for fat loss or performance? Like there's probably, like I was thinking kind of just, you know, going through them, like, you know, intermittent fasting, you know, magic pills, magic potions, like what are the fundamentals that we can kind of help battle the bullshit a little bit to stay within the Power Athlete Radio theme of battling the bullshit?
Yeah. So the nice thing, I guess, about social media is everybody should understand that it really is just calories in, calories out by now, right? There's enough people out there trying to say it's not, but there's enough smarter individuals rationalizing why it actually is. So calories in, calories out, that's it. Now where people want to say is like, oh, I have Hashimoto's or I have this or that. It still comes down to a calorie balance thing. So if we're trying to lose weight, we need to be in a negative balance, meaning that we need to expend more than we are not necessarily consuming, but our body is absorbing. We can look at it that way. So if you do have something like Hashimoto's or some thyroid issues where maybe your metabolism is a little thrown off kilter, that just means that you have a different baseline, but the foundation is still that we need to be in a negative balance. So that one's there. One thing though, that I looking in the Discord, talking to people, that I really do want to kind of put to bed, and I'm going to put a caveat on this that I'll explain, but there really is no reason why you should expect a performance decrease in the gym while losing weight. And the caveat there is going to be for those individuals who are already pretty lean. So if you're already 10% body fat, and I think about this with like some of the combat athletes I've worked with or stuff, like when we get towards the end of the cut and we're really trying to suck off those last few pounds, then maybe. But for your average person, there's really no reason for performance decrement to come with a weight loss challenge or a weight loss initiative, because one, your body still has excess stores, right? So if you have even 15% body fat, there's plenty of calories in your body fat that your body can pull from. But two, it's not like calories drive everything, right? Now, will you be maybe a little bit more fatigued? Sure. But that just means check your sleep. How's your sleep? You know, is your sleep all dialed in? But also I think what people do is they build up this idea that they're like starving themselves. I'm starving myself. I'm withholding calories that my body needs. So then naturally I'm not going to perform as well. But again, if we go back to like the car example, right? My car can still hit top speed, whether the gas tank is full or there's a quarter tank left. Yeah. It can still hit top speed, right? So the idea that your performance has to suffer when you're in some kind of negative calorie balance, that's not true. There's no reason for that to be true outside of the psychological aspect of being in a negative calorie balance, right? Because what comes with being hungry? Well, you're irritable. So, okay, if I'm irritable and something isn't quite going my way in training, well, then I'm going to, fucking blow the world up because of it, right? Other things that come with a negative calorie balance, the little dings and nicks that you get, yeah, you might feel those a little bit more. But in terms of just true performance, because we can look at a sport like collegiate wrestling, right? Collegiate wrestling, where we have people who are in a negative calorie balance for a series of months, are still able to perform at a very high level. So there's no inherent reason why you need to have a performance decrement when you are losing weight. That's my biggest kind of, I guess, myth that I want people to understand.
I agree. I mean, dude, you guys are obviously familiar with Rudy Reyes. You know, we've had Rudy Reyes on the podcast many times, and then he's also, you know, been a close friend of mine. I mean, we've hung out at Summer Strong, hung out numerous times. One of the things Rudy said on the podcast once is, you know, when he grew up in an orphanage, they used to kind of withhold food from them as kind of punishments. So what he would do is when he got his food, he would give it to his brothers and sisters, and then he would like starve and feel hungry. And he kind of developed this really like interesting like relationship with food where he associated hunger and starving himself with like piety and like being with good, and that being full and eating associated with like somebody else not getting food and a negative feeling. So he had kind of a really fucked up relationship with food because of abuse. And if you know Rudy, like whatever you think you know about him, and you watched you know, America's Toughest Challenge and SAS and all this stuff you've seen, you know, Generation Kill, there's this vision of Rudy, and Rudy might be one of the best people I've ever met, for the fact that like when he told me that as a dad, it fucking broke my heart that, you know, he and his brothers were abandoned and they went to live in this orphanage and these people didn't take care of them. And that was an interesting point of like being hungry and suffering was like a good thing for him because he knew he was helping his family and his brothers and sisters. And so I kind of like tucked that in the back of my head where I think like if I feel hungry, I'm like, good. I'm like, Rudy would be happy about this. And so like, it was, you know, like whether or not like, you know, you're cutting calories, you're getting in, like I kind of embrace the hunger. And I'm like, oh man, I feel hungry. This is good. And I always go back to my Rudy Reyes where I'm like, you know what, like Rudy would be happy that I'm hungry right now. And I know it's a little weird. It's sick. But like that idea of like, I have never gotten close to sub 10% body fat without being hungry consistently in my day. Like it's just like the weirdest thing. Like anybody that like my wife's a great example. She's like, man, I've dieted down and she's been, you know, 10, 12% body fat. She's like, yeah, I've never been hungry doing it. And I'm like, man, that's wild. I was like, you are like the one in the million on this, because for me to be sub 10%, like when we did 22 Jack Street, I was 267, 268 at like 7%. And I was hungry for that last month. Like every single meal as I was eating and got done, I was hungry. Like I hadn't eaten enough. And I had this like, not like food noise, but it just was like this growling and hunger in my stomach. And I was like, you know what? Like you look in the mirror and I'm like, shit, man, I'm pretty close. Like, and that was the one thing I told Arash is I was like, you know what? We're going to do this for 12 weeks. I'm going to cut your calories. You're going to get in shape, but you just have to make the deal that you're okay with being hungry. And he said to me, he's like, I'm fine to be hungry. I've been full so many times that hungry will probably teach me a lot. And we go back and we talk about this. He's like, dude, like I needed to know what hungry was. And he goes, I wonder if a lot of people would do a lot better if they knew what hungry really was. Not just like hungry once or hungry waiting on the meal, but like hungry over the course of over a bunch of days.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's why I say like the caveat to it, because I think when people do get to that point where it's like, I'm forever hungry, right? Throughout the entire week, I'm never not hungry. That's when we might be at that kind of threshold where it's like, okay, now if a performance decrement happens, it could be because we're truly underfueled. But yeah, I mean, you know, I just think we have partitioned our day so nicely that we have these evenly spaced meals and things like that. But one of the benefits of growing up in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska is in the summers, we worked in the fields a lot, doing farm stuff. And again, it was like, whether you're hungry or not, you still have to get this work done before we can go in. And so you just learn to kind of, just embrace it. And so I tell my clients all the time, like, hey, hunger is the merit badge, right? If you're doing this, then you're earning your merit badge of hunger. But kind of going full circle back to what you had talked about previously, the problem then becomes when the restrictions of the challenge or whatever lift, people just go right back to how they were. And it's like, no, if we've spent 90 days changing and you've dropped all this weight and all of that kind of stuff, you're a new person, right? And you know, I think Arash is a good example of that, where it's like he made this huge change and it would have been very easy for him to drift back, but he's still pretty solid to where he was. And it's like, yeah, you have to embrace the new person that you are now and know that means things are going to be different. So you'll come a little bit out of the deficit, but you're not going to swing back to eating 3,000 calories like you were before, because that's how you were before, but now you're new. Right. So, I think people could do with being hungry a little bit. I think they'll find out it's not going to be too terrible. Now, I guess another myth that kind of ties into is the idea of fasting. Let's see, how do I want to say this?
Well, fasting to me, there's nothing magic about it. All it is just it's a fun, fancy way to do caloric restriction.
Yeah, I think fasting ties into that emotional side of this, where it's like it's John, it's way too simple for me to say, hey, all you're going to do is you're going to take your snack that you have every night before you go to bed, and you're just going to get rid of that. Everything else you're going to eat like normal. You're just going to do that one little thing, and you're going to be fine because that's a 400 calorie snack. That means we're going to be in a deficit. That's too easy. What I need to do is I need to make this almost insurmountable challenge to myself, where I need to fast for X number of days. And I think people choose to do that because it's kind of a win-win. If they do it, well, yeah, they're probably going to lose some weight. Great. But if they can attain it, well, it was really hard, right? Like it was a really hard thing to do, and I just didn't do it. But hey, it's really hard. There's no, I guess, glory in that. Like what? Like,
dude, it's just. I've told you the story when I went to Boss Rutan's birthday. Kevin Arnold, the actor. Kevin. No, it's
Kevin James.
Yeah, Kevin James. He had gone on Rogan. He talked about doing that 40-day fast, and had done a bunch of fasting and this whole deal. And so he was telling us the story of fasting for 40 days. And like Boss and like the other guys that were there, and one of the other dudes who I won't name was also there. One of the guys was like, tell me more. This sounds amazing. And like Boss and like the other guys are like, this sounds fucking terrible. Like, why would you do this? But like, he had this, and then, like the crazy story was like when he broke the fast, he was like, he felt pretty good. Ate his first meal, ate his second, and he got like such severe body pain shutdown that they had to take him to the hospital. And, like it's like, there is a little bit of and it's probably religion, a little bit of Catholicism, the suffering through sacrifice, that like, the more you suffer, the more sacrifice, the closer to God. So maybe there's like this kind of idea of suffering and through sacrifice and salvation. But I think at least with Hammer 90 and some of the stuff we want is that you want to be the healthiest version of yourself. And there's a healthier version that's probably closer to 10 to 12% body fat than you are at 20 to 25 or 25 to 30, especially when you start talking about, guys over the age of 40 or even let's say 50, that, now you're 30, 35% body fat over the age of 50. The outcomes in terms of health and wellness start really deteriorating. And it's not, and then you start thinking about the systemic inflammation from carrying that much body fat and just joints and this, and things start wearing out. Like there is a better version, a healthier version of you that looks like being having less body fat in relation to lean body mass. So as we kind of get rolling a little bit on this Hammer 90, we're going to combine coaching, community, and training, and do it in such a powerful way, which is very typical of Power Athlete and everything that we do, which is, being able to help people take them on this journey and have these transformations. So if you're fired up about hearing this and you want to join in, you want to get more information, I want you to go to powerathletehq.com/hammer90. And there's going to be information there. Drop your email and we will reach out to you on this. So like I said, if you're ready to lock this thing down and get serious, we're going to put this thing together and we're going to have some fun. So I'm pretty excited, and we'll send you some details. And, myself and Dr. Ben Skutnik will be, piloting this thing and helping you guys along the way. So let me know. Jump on board and we'll get crushing. So Ben, thanks for coming on and dispelling some myths and talking through this a little bit. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more. So thanks for tuning in to Power Athlete Radio. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by klfi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com patreon.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See you.